Joe Rogan has slammed Biden's escalation in Ukraine. And he's saying that this is going to push us towards World War III. And there is a lot of anger from a lot of people saying, how can you have an outgoing administration pushing us to the brink of international war, which we're basically already in, but escalating to the point where we cannot get out of it? How can you do this right before a president is set to get in who was voted in partly because he's going to end this war? Well, we've got the words of Vladimir Klitschko. He's the brother of Vitaly Klitschko, saying, Joe Rogan, I disagree. The only weapon that Putin intends to use is propaganda. And he makes some interesting points, but largely I am disgusted and I am sick of these people. I'm sorry, dude. Joe Rogan's right. And I've expressed similar opinions. Russia is bad. It is going bad for them. It's not apocalyptically bad, I guess. Klitschko says it was supposed to be a 3-day conflict and it's lasted 3 years. And he's just trying to scare you into thinking there's going to be nukes in World War III, blah, blah, blah. Sure. If you're telling me that Vladimir Putin's scared because his 3-day war turned into 3 years, that increases the likelihood of nuclear weapons. Not to mention, Russia has launched an intermediate-range ballistic missile, which is basically indistinguishable from an intercontinental ballistic missile. It's just meant to target a smaller range. And it could carry nukes. It might as well just be an ICBM. And we get this constant stream of Ukrainians who insult us as Americans. That's what Klitschko is doing. It's an insult to the intelligence of the American people who have voted against funding your war. I get it. Putin started it. Yep. He's a bad guy. He's held on to power through schemes. He's an autocrat. I think he's not a good person. He should not have invaded Ukraine. He is bad. He is at fault. Now, I get it. I say it all the time. But Tim, the West was engaged in subterfuge and soft power, trying to push Ukraine into the EU and NATO. That's always allowed. You can't come to me and say that there's some excuse for Putin engaging in a hostile kinetic conflict, invading a foreign country, simply because we offered better terms to Ukraine. Now, I know many people are saying, but we ousted Yanukovych, who wasn't giving us anything we want. And I say this, soft power in whatever form is preferable to kinetic conflict. And if Russia can't compete, I get that this is where we go. And so I do give some culpability to the West for not understanding what was going to happen. Trump certainly did. And that's why Trump won. That you are turning the pressure cooker all the way up and Putin is going to strike you. I get it. Let me put it this way. I can go to a bar and I can talk smack and do whatever I want. And then if someone swings at me, I'm allowed to speak. I'm allowed to do these things. Granted, it's substantially more conflict with international war and all of these things. But I tell you this, my friends, we, the American people, are under no obligation to give our money, our time, our resources, our special forces, whatever it may be, to Ukraine. And so when they try to play this, you need to support us because we're the heroes. I say, oh, yeah, good luck. Good luck. So Joe Rogan comes out, rightly so, criticizing what's going on. Let me play the clip for you. And then we have this response this is from Vladimir Klitschko. And he's a great boxer. I get it. And he wants to defend his country. I absolutely get that. You know, I've been to Ukraine several times. I actually considered moving there. Super cheap. Central or Eastern Europe. I was like, there's an opportunity for being able to produce things and living cheaply in a place that I actually rather enjoyed. But what I tell you right now is none of that matters. My personal views and opinions on the people that I know there, the things that I enjoyed hanging out in Kiev. Been there a couple times, just twice. But I was there for a little while. I was there for over a month. And then I came back and I was there for just about a week. But I tell you this. We, the American people, we do work. We fund things. We pay for things. We have treaties. And many of us don't even agree with all those treaties. So don't insult our intelligence that we need to be involved in your conflict. Right now, we've got news coming up from Le Monde that we've got who's France and let's just say European forces, Macron, they're discussing deploying troops into Ukraine. Sending European troops into Ukraine to directly enter the war. And that means World War III. I am not interested in Ukraine, which original name is borderland. The people who are that's what they call it, the Ukraine, which meant the borderland of the Soviets. And they've done horrible things to people who live there. And there are a lot of good people who live there. And they deserve to be free and run their own country and all of these things. I get it. But World War III, Here's the clip from Joe Rogan.
They're launching missiles into Russia.
Yeah.
How are you allowed to do that when you're on the way out? Like, the people don't want you to be there anymore. There should be like some sort of a pause for like significant actions that could potentially start World War III. Maybe that would be a good thing that we would like to avoid from a dying former president. Mm-hmm. The whole thing is nuts.
I mean, look, I don't know about politics.
Zelensky says Putin is terrified. You, man. You people. You people are about to start World War III.
Wow, Joe. I hear you, dude. And they attack me, and they accuse me of all everything and all the names in the book, and I'm just like, we don't want it. Here's Klitschko. Here's his response to Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan, I listened to your latest podcast. I'm sending you this video to let you know that I disagree.
He said, I disagree.
About these American weapons being sent to Ukraine, which you believe will lead to the Third World War. So, let me tell you that you're repeating Russian propaganda. Putin's Russia is in trouble, so they want to scare you and people like you. His war was supposed to last 3 days. It has lasted 3 years, thanks to the heroism and sacrifice of us Ukrainians.
You know, that one in particular is offensive to me. The United States has spent hundreds of billions of dollars providing weapons and tactics. We've got troops in Europe. It is not look, I can respect Ukrainian fighters fighting a war, 100%. Absolutely. But no, if the West did not intervene, then Putin's war would have been 3 days.
So you're using the only weapon that Putin really intends to use, propaganda. And this weapon really weakens our democracies. Putin's Russia wants to destroy Ukraine quietly. They want America to stay quiet, not great, but quiet. A great America is not an America that abandons countries that defend freedom with their lives. In short, you see, I have quite a few points of difference. If you invite me on your podcast, we could discuss them like free men.
There it is. Yeah, have me on your show, Joe. Well, I will say this. I think Joe should have Klitschko on his show. I mean, it's Ukraine stuff aside, the dude is very interesting. He's a heavyweight boxing champion. He's a longest reigning heavyweight boxing champion, and his brother is the mayor in Kiev. I actually think it would be a very, very interesting conversation. I'd actually be interested in hearing it. I'm not going to tell Joe what to do, though, but clearly the dude wants to come on. Now, some people are saying he's just trying to go on the show, and that's why he's saying this. I'm like, no, I think he wants to go on the show because he's deeply invested in Ukraine winning this war, which, again, I can respect that. If the U.S. got invaded and we needed help, I'd be saying whatever I could to get help as well. But I'll tell you this, don't insult our intelligence. I'm not interested in being insulted, okay? We know what's going on. There's an international conflict brewing over Ukraine, and it has nothing to do with the Ukrainian government. It has everything to do with the region. It has everything to do with the Gazprom natural gas monopoly. It has a lot to do with the Black Sea access for the Russians. So I'm not interested. I don't see why the United States needs to be involved in this conflict. Now they're talking about sending European troops to Ukraine. As the conflict in Ukraine enters a new phase of escalation, discussions over sending Western troops and private defense companies to Ukraine have been revived, Le Monde has learned from corroborating sources. The debate about sending troops to Ukraine, which French President Emmanuel Macron initiated at a meeting between Kiev's allies in Paris in February, was strongly opposed by some European countries led by Germany. However, it was relaunched in recent weeks thanks to the visit from France of the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer on November 11th. So you got the UK and France on discussing sending European troops into Ukraine, which would likely trigger a Russian reaction. We've already got 2 undersea cables severed to say, oh, maybe it was an accident. Maybe. If Russia retaliates against Europe, then Article 5 of NATO is triggered and the United States enters the war. It's so stupid. Russia is then going to go to China, Iran, other countries, and we could see a heavy split. Now, I'm not entirely confident that that would happen. I actually think with the Trump administration coming in, though there are tensions escalating, the firing of an IRBM from Russia, and that's so stupid. It's an IRBM. It's an ICBM. Ukraine, I'll give you that one. Kiev said it was an ICBM, and the U.S. like, no, it's not. It was an IRBM. What's that? Well, it's basically the same thing, but just, doesn't go that far. What? So if Russia fired an ICBM, you'd call it an intermediate ranged missile. Well, they're not going to load an ICBM with enough fuel to fly halfway around the world if they're only launching it 300 miles. It can carry nukes, 4 warheads. RS-26, they called it. They say the IRBM that was fired was basically an RS-26, which is a Russian nuclear MIRV, a MIRV, multiple independently targeted reentry vehicle. So let's not play these games. Right now, they are talking about deploying these troops, and we may see ourselves in World War III. Here you go. Threat of world war is serious and real, Poland says, as Putin steps up threats against the West. And then we have this. World War III map shows safest countries to go to if Putin starts nuclear strikes. Well, the U.S. ain't one of them. Chile. There you go. New Zealand likely would be one of the safest places ever. You know what's really fascinating to me? Well, I just want to point this out. Fiji probably would be safe. I'll give you Fiji. Can we make this bigger? There we go. Okay, Iceland is probably fine. They really don't have much going on. But I got to be honest. I don't think you want to be in Iceland without access to imports. Certainly, they have geothermal energy, which has made things quite a bit better up there. But Iceland is basically just a big sulfuric rock. And before the invention and completion of their geothermal power stations, life wasn't so good for the people of Iceland. Greenland, yeah, if you're okay with roughing it and eat lots of fish. Chile, okay, I'll give you that one. If it does turn into a full-scale world war, I don't see why they put South Africa or Argentina. They're going to be secondary nations involved in the conflict, 100%. I actually would think like Central Africa and Greenland make the most sense. I see New Zealand, but I'm like, hey, look, these major urban centers are going to be targets for conflict. You will see occupying forces in this area. If you really want to be like removed from everything, then it probably Alaska might be okay. It's basically go live in the middle of nowhere in the wilderness and live off the land. Because if the argument is the northern hemisphere will be just blanketed by radioactive dust from all the nuclear detonations, because it will be the northern hemisphere, then anywhere in the southern hemisphere is probably okay. But if you go to Chile or Argentina or Australia or New Zealand, you are still in, and South Africa, major urban centers, which will probably be occupied. So how about this? How about we don't go to war? That's an idea. How about we just say, look, we don't care about the Donbass region, and there's no reason to escalate war for this. I'll leave it there. Smash that like button. Share the show with everyone you know. Become a member over at timcast.com. Stay tuned. We got more segments coming up today, and we'll see you all shortly.